Hi, this is Dr. Greg. We're at CoreFit and we're working with Corey today, and Corey's going to be putting us through our warm-up. To start with, this is something that we can do before any workout, and also something that in and of itself, for someone who's just beginning, it's a great place for those for people who've been really sedentary for a while, just to get started. So go ahead, Corey, the floor is yours.
All right, so as Greg was saying, this is a warm-up that I use in a lot of classes and with a lot of clients, but it is a workout on its own, and we're gonna go through today two different versions of it. One is gonna be a little bit easier, and one is gonna be a little more advanced and a little bit more challenging. But either one is great, and we'll have a lot of variations, and we'll go through the movements themselves. So the first one that we're going to do is basically just an air squat. So we're gonna move our feet about hip width or a little bit wider, maybe shoulder width apart. Toes are gonna be out just a little bit, maybe 30 degrees or so. Nice tight core, nice and tall from the tailbone all the way to the crown of the head. And then using the hands for balance forward, just sink those hips down and then coming back up. As you get more flexible, you're gonna go a little bit lower, but in the beginning, just going as low as you comfortably can, keeping the feet flat. So you can use the hands forward the entire time, or like Greg is doing, you can actually pull them in. If you want to work the shoulders a little bit, you can keep those the arms extended forward. But notice how their feet are flat, their hips are moving backward before they even start the movement, so it's a hip hinge. And as you're doing this, as I said, as you feel more comfortable with it, you're going to go a little bit lower, trying to get that hip crease below the knees. Initially, you do it for about 10, 15 seconds, work your way up to 20, maybe even 30 seconds, and that looks good. So the second exercise is called blast-offs. We're gonna get into a push-up position, so the hands about shoulder width apart, nice and tight in the core, straight line from the shoulder through the hip to the heel, and from here, we're just gonna shift back, keeping the hips in the same height, the knees are off the ground, and then come back into that push-up position. So the arms stay straight, and we're just loading the legs and then blasting off back into the push-up position. So even though this is supported on the arms, most of the work is happening in the legs. So as I was saying, it's supported in that push-up position. You can have the feet closer together, you can have them further apart if you want a wider base, a little bit more balance. But the idea is that you're loading back, so you're pushing your hips back. The legs are taking most of the effort here, although you will feel this in the shoulders, in the triceps. And again, start with maybe 10, 15 seconds of effort, work your way up to 20 to 30 seconds. Just doing what you can as you can. Now the next exercise is a little bit more dynamic. They're called skater hops. So we're gonna use lateral movement. So all you're gonna be doing is you're gonna be jumping from one side to the other. So you're gonna load up that hip, push off, and then drive to the other side. Now if you notice, I'm tapping my foot down here, but as you get better at it, you're actually gonna keep that other foot off the ground. And as you get more comfortable, jumping a little bit further. So as you're getting started with this exercise, make sure that you're not jumping too far. You wanna get comfortable with it. This is a warm-up, even if it's an exercise on its own. But as you get more comfortable, as the blood starts to pump and the heart rate goes up, you're breathing deeper, you can actually start to jump a little bit further. Try to keep most of the jump horizontal. You don't want to jump up too much, you just want to jump across. And as you get good at it, you're going to go from one side to the other very quickly. Get the arms into it, that's why it's called a skater hop. You can pretend you're one of those speed skaters from the Olympics. Now we're going to do groiners. So this is a bit of a stretch and a bit of a strength exercise at the same time. So we're gonna start in the push-up position again. So hands roughly shoulder width apart. Core nice and tight, nice and tall. You're gonna plant one foot. I'll show you this one since that's where the camera is. One foot somewhere beside that lead hand. It doesn't have to be all the way to it, depending on your flexibility. Then you're gonna pop your hips up and switch your feet. So in between, drop the hips down so you're getting a bit of a stretch. So it's not trying to go as fast as you can, you're actually using that positioning to get a stretch. So use that transition point when one foot is forward, close to that lead hand, whichever side you're on, get a bit of a stretch. And again, it is a warm-up, so you don't want to drop the hips too much. But as you get more and more comfortable with it, again, the blood starts flowing, the heart is pounding, you get more and more warm, you can drop those hips a little bit more and feel a little bit more of a stretch. You're gonna be bracing yourself with the upper body, so you're still getting a lot of work there as well. So we've opened up the hips now with that groiner, which is a little bit more forward and back. Now we're gonna open up the hips sideways. So taking that first squat position, we're gonna go a little bit wider, like a sumo stance. So the toes are gonna point even more than 30 degrees. We're gonna sink down, keeping the foot flat, heel down, over to one side. We're gonna use the hands as a bit of a reference point. Depending on the flexibility, they might be a little bit higher, they might be a little bit lower. But the idea is now that we're gonna shift over, keeping the hips low. I'm using my hands as a reference so that I know that if I'm coming up a little bit, I'm coming away from the floor, and I don't wanna do that. So I'm just gonna shift over one side, shift over to the other side. So I'm loading one leg as I'm stretching the other leg, then I load the other leg, stretch. So it's a bit of a stretch even as the quads are working. So here again, because there is a little bit of flexibility involved in this, you want to do what you can as you can. So using the hands as a reference point, you want to think about where the hips are. That's the focus of this movement. And as low as you can, but again, within reason, you don't want to be straining yourself too much. You're just shifting over from one side to the other. Now you can point your toes out, remember, a little bit further. They're not going to be straight forward. They're going to be out to the side so that the knees can actually track across your toes. We've been doing a lot of exercises for the front of the body, the quads, the core, chest and shoulders. Now we're going to take everything to the back. And this exercise is called a Superman. So you're going to be laying on your front, stretch your fingers and your toes, point to opposite sides of the room, wherever you are. Now here, you're gonna raise the right arm and the left leg and alternate with the left arm and the right leg. Now I'm not just lifting straight up, I'm also extending forward as I raise. So I'm lengthening my spine, pausing briefly at the top. So the joints that you're focusing on here are your knees and your elbows. Whether or not your leg is straight or a little bit bent, whether the arm is a little bit more straight or bent, that's not where you want to focus. So you want to reach forward with the elbow through the fingertips and through the knee, out extending through the toes. And that's where you're trying to get that height off the floor even as you're extending. So this, depending on how it looks, Treena's a little more flexible in the ab area. So she's getting a lot higher off the floor with the arms and the legs than Greg. But again, it's what your body can do as you do it. So classic, we're gonna do the push-up. A couple of variations on this. If you can do a nice strong push-up, you're on the balls of the feet. They can be closer together. If you want a little bit wider base, move them apart a little bit. Hands about shoulder width or so. And then you're just gonna lower down to about 90 degrees at the elbow. If you're comfortable with it, you can go all the way down to the floor. Keep your face down toward the floor so you're not craning your neck as you're pushing. Nice and relaxed. If that's a little bit tough, just drop the knees and then you just shorten that lever and you can continue doing your push-ups or even start from this position. If that's a little bit tough as well, then you can start leaning onto a countertop or even a wall. So you're gonna be tight through your core in this. So again, from the shoulder through the hip to the heel, nice and tall. If you want to drop through the knees, then you've got that nice straight line from the shoulder through the hip to the knee. But either way, your core is tight. You're breathing in on the way down toward the floor, breathing out on the way up. That's where the hard part of the push-up happens to be. Once again, we're going to take the exercises from the front of the body, almost the opposite of a push-up. I'm not sure what the actual name is, but I call them yoga tabletops. So we're going to start seated on the floor. If this is a bit of a stretch, then just try to relax. You don't have to have completely locked knees here, but the toes are going to be up, so you do want to feel a bit of a stretch. That's part of the exercise. Then you're gonna find some place by the hips, and I'm gonna have to experiment where this is, because what I'm doing is I'm gonna drive my hips up toward the ceiling. If I'm nice and straight from the knee through the hip to the shoulder, then this is a good position for me to be in. My arms are straight up and down, my shins are straight up and down, and then I'm gonna alternate going from this position, pulling those toes back to push up toward the ceiling. Pause briefly, feel the stretch, squeeze the glutes in the low back. I'm just going through that motion. So depending on, a lot of men especially, very tight across the shoulders and the chest. So you're gonna be providing your own resistance, not just the gravity holding your body down, but now actually coming through with that shoulder push, or with the hip push, and feeling that stretch across the shoulders and the chest. But try your best to maintain as high a posture with the hips as you possibly can. And again, allow your face to open and look up toward the ceiling so you're not craning your neck as you do this.